Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Katie Yoga Sunday.
Yeah. Um, I put the Sunday in because we're trying to release these every Sunday. But if it's not Sunday
Hello to everyone on Tuesday.
or Wednesday, no one watches anything Monday, I'm guessing. So if you're watching this Monday,
Good
why?
on you.
Oh.
No, we're everyday inclusive. Hello to everyday people out there.
Big shout out to our subscribers. Huge thank you for the continuing support for the community channel. It's just been awesome.
Yeah,
it's
thank you
very
so
encouraging.
much.
Thank you, guys.
And today we're going to look at bridge pose and why we might use a block under our pelvis
Yeah.
and why we might not.
But before we jump into the question,
Yeah, so if you want to find out more about us, we've got a website out there that we'll put in the comments below or the info below,
Yep.
and you can read up, just find out more about us and about what we do. It's mainly about our bricks and mortar site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also a new extension to the site now, which
The
has our
website?
online content and things like that.
Yeah, so the website has all that information on there, and you can subscribe and practice with us. And also, if you want to jump onto our mailing list, there's a link to do that as well. We don't send out heaps of emails, probably.
Yeah, once a term, perhaps. And it's just really just a catch up of any events coming up. We also run a book club that comes up as well. So
yeah, sometimes I chuck in some recipes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some delicious food.
And if you haven't got time to watch us, continually like this on the video, then all the podcasts are available on Spotify or Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, it's a great way to pass time or learn while you're driving somewhere, work or wherever.
Yeah, so to make sure you don't miss an episode, subscribe or follow this community channel. And as Katie mentioned, you can join up on the mailing list over on the main website. Okay, so let's dive in. What is bridge pose?
Bridge pose.
Bridge pose.
So bridge pose, and I presume you're doing this with a teacher guiding you, not me.
Yep.
On this podcast, but with your teacher, you're on your back, knees bent, feet on the ground, and you lift your hips up off the ground. It's a back bend. It's a supine back bend. So supine means laying down. Back bend, we're arching our back. And I think it's often misinterpreted, or that when we say, if we've got a tight back, we think, oh, we have to do a back bend. But actually in back bends, you tend to be stretching more the front of the body.
Okay.
And so if you've got a tight shoulders or something, you might be better off doing a forward bend or bring your arms out in front, crossing them over in like a Garudasana, eagle pose, to stretch the back of the body.
Yep.
So generally back bends stretch the front.
Yep.
Forward bends will stretch the back.
Awesome. So this would have a Sanskrit name, I'm assuming. So what would that be?
Setu Bandhasana is commonly used for bridge, or Setu Bandha Sarvangasana.
That's a mouthful. That's a mouthful.
Sarvangasana.
So it's not a Sanskrit lesson. We'll just move on, shall we?
No. Sarvangasana. Sarvangasana. Setu Bandha Sarvangasana.
Nice, beautiful.
It took me a while to get there.
So what are the benefits of bridge pose?
That's obviously not the Sanskrit name I usually use.
No.
I can't say that way. It's abbreviated to Setu Bandha.
Yeah.
So the benefits of bridge pose. So let's talk about the musculoskeletal benefits to start with. As I said, back bends generally open the front of the body, so you're getting a stretch through the front of the body, thinking quads, front of thighs, hip flexors, front of hips, abdominals, chest. Interesting though, the neck is flexed in this one. Most back bends, you would have an even curve all the way along the spine throughout the entire back bend. So if you think of cobra laying on your belly, when you lift up, the back's an even curve the whole way along. But in bridge, the chin is forward, yeah?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so your neck is in a flex position.
Yeah.
So you'll get a bit of a stretch for the back of the neck.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's the stretchy components, I guess.
Yeah.
And then the strengthening components, you're using the back of the body to help lift you up against the pull of gravity. So you're lifting your body weight up using the back body. So predominantly hammies and glutes are in there to help propel you away from the ground. Also, when we do bridge, we might, you know how sometimes you do it and you roll in and out with the breath? It's
Yes.
not a nice little,
Like a bridge flow roll.
yeah, it's sort of like what we might do it as a warm up. You wouldn't come into the full bridge that you could do because it would just be a warm up, but you roll in and out one vertebra at a time.
Yeah.
So that can be really nice for just feeling that articulation along the spine, moving from one vertebrae to the next. So really good at regaining some agility if you've lost it there, and getting that movement happening along the spine.
Yeah.
Back bends also, they tend to be quite invigorating and awakening practices, quite stimulating. So they're heating, they're nice to do to sort of bring in the energy, wake you up. Also, we talked about the neck being flexed. So the neck is actually in what's called Jalandhara Bandha, which is the neck lock. We could translate it as, and it's when we're in Jalandhara Bandha, we're compressing the baroreceptors in the neck. And so the baroreceptors are these little homeostasis mechanisms that monitor our blood pressure and bring our blood pressure back into balance. So they're in the carotid artery in the neck. And so when we when we have a decrease in blood pressure, so the carotid artery is pumping blood from the heart to the head, and the baroreceptors go, hang on, we've had a decrease in blood pressure. We need to increase it back to come back into homeostasis, to come back into balance. So, and the vice versa. If the blood pressure is too high, the baroreceptors will communicate it to the brain and then we'll try to bring it back down. So what happens when the baroreceptors are compressed? It actually causes the blood pressure to decrease. So it has a calming effect.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it has this compression, which the baroreceptors think, oh, I've got to reduce blood pressure.
Yeah.
So the blood pressure reduces, and we have a really calming effect as well with the relaxation response kicking in. So we get parasympathetic nervous system activity.
Wow. So
calming. So to summarize, it's a calming pose.
Calming pose. So how does the block help with that?
So the benefits of using a block, it actually takes out the strengthening component. And so if you're using Setu Bandha, Setu Bandha Sarvangasana.
Nailed it.
If you're using, I just have to say it quick.
Yep. I just blur through the bits.
No.
Yeah.
And so if you're, I forgot what I was saying now. So if you're using a block and you're doing Setu Bandha for a relaxation purpose, then the block's really beneficial because it is more of a restorative focus. You take out that strength component and you can actually rest the pelvis on the block and relax and focus on that soothing of the nervous system, that calming of the nervous system, the relaxation response. It is a passive stretch, so it's more of a stretchy focus.
Yeah.
So you get that good stretch through the front of the body, and you can actually get if you're in it and you move, and I'm sure we have a video on this in our online classes. If you move one of your legs towards you, one of your heels towards you, you can actually get a little bit of leverage there to get deeper into the quads. So it can be a good way to hold you up to get a little bit more of a quad stretch there. So, and I know there's videos on our pre-recorded classes online where, say I've done a whole heap of core work where I've strengthened all around the front, the sides, the back of the core, including glutes, and say hammies, and I've done bridge pose over the blocks as a way to rest at the end of that core work because it stretches the anterior core, the front of the core.
Yeah.
There's a way to balance out the practice a little bit, stretching the front of the core. And it's then when you've got the support, it's more of a cooling back bend. So as I said earlier, back bends tend to be heating, but it doesn't have that heating component because you're resting. So it's a really nice restorative way to practice bridge. However, in saying that, the strength component of bridge is very important in our practice. Our yoga tends to be lacking in posterior chain strength. So that's strength, focus strength work in the back of the body. So if you take half sun sows, for example, there's one back bend, and that's when we reach the arms overhead.
Yes.
And then we fold forward into Uttanasana, and then we
Yeah.
come into Ardha Uttanasana and back into Uttanasana,
Yeah.
and then all the way back up into Hastasana with the arms overhead. So there's a lot of forward bending happening, say, for example, in the half sun salutations. There's a lot of hamstring stretching happening, and although the hammies will be contracting a little bit to hold us up against the pull of gravity, there tends to be a lot of hamstring lengthening in yoga and not so much back body strengthening. So that there tends to be a dominance of postures that are forward bending. So that's where, or stretching the back of the body. So that's where it's really good to do bridge pose and work at strengthening the back
Rather
of the
than
body.
using a block.
Well, yeah. I mean, you might have already done a practice, like I said, with the core stuff. You might have already done a practice where you've done a whole heap of back body strength work, lots of locust poses, warrior threes, or, the balancing table, or bird dog, it's often called. So you might already have done that and you just want to use bridge as a way to rest. Or you might just want something super restorative and you'd use your block. But I think there just needs to be just consideration to make sure with your practice you're doing enough of this posterior chain strengthening in your practice, just generally. So in bridge with the block, the other thing to consider is the block is gently pressing against the sacrum. So there is a slight tuck of the bottom down, so what we'd call a posterior tilt, which can be lovely if you have a little bit of extra curve in your lumbar spine. It can help take out some of that compression that back bends might produce. However, with that, you won't be getting so much of a lift up through the chest. Okay. So if you just tuck your bum a little bit now, tuck your bum down and then lift up through your sternum.
Yep.
And then relax that, let your spine come back to normal and lift up through your sternum. You see how you can get more lift in a neutral position.
Okay.
So you just, it's really just a slight minor detail, but that tuck down of the tailbone, it can be great for people.
Yeah.
But then it can also just restrict a little range of movement in the the chest. I don't think it really matters, but yeah.
It's nice to play those little nuances.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. So how would you use the block?
I tend to use 2 blocks, so I'm more stable. So I lift my hips and put the first block underneath on its lowest level. And then I see how I feel. If I want to go higher, I put the second block underneath on its lowest level.
Right, so talking the hips, not the lower back.
Yes, you don't want it in your lower back. Good point, Dave. So you want your pelvis, your sacrum on it.
Okay, awesome.
And then if I'm feeling adventurous, I might flip that top block on its middle level. So I get a little bit more height. And sometimes you need to lift the heels to do that, to give you the height. And then you rest the pelvis on the block. You bring your heels back to the ground.
Because if you use 2 blocks and flip the one on its side on top, that's more stable than just using 1 block, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And so that's really good if then you're doing something as well, like coming into like a Vibhuti, so like a half shoulder stand variation where you lift the legs off the ground and sort of freestand. So that gives you a more stable base, so it's just a bit safer.
How high should we try to achieve this resting pose over a block?
Oh, it just depends on your level of comfort. It's really, it just depends on what feels good. I mean, there's some really lovely openings that you can do on focusing on the hip flexor with the block at its lowest level. So it might be at the lowest level for those, or that might be enough for your back.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for how long?
How long do we hold it?
Yeah.
Well, that's really individual, and it's also really based on style of yoga that you're practicing. So if you could do those bridge rolls we talked about without the block. This is in and out. That's half a breath.
Yeah.
Or you might want to hold a normal bridge, maybe 6 to 8 breaths.
Yeah.
If you were using a block, you could definitely hold it for longer.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's more restorative. So you could hold it for a couple of minutes or so.
So what about a pose opposite once you've come out of it?
I would tend to either rest and let my spine settle.
Yeah.
Then I might do windshield wipers, which is a little, or any sort of little twist.
Yeah.
And then you could come into a gentle forward bend,
Awesome.
like knees in towards the chest, or happy baby. Some people love coming straight into a forward bend after back bends. It's not ideal for everybody. So I tend to give students an option there of do what feels best for you.
Yeah. And just to remember too, like if you're practicing this stuff, do it in conjunction with your teacher. Okay, because we're providing information here, but you really need, if you're practicing, to have your teacher with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect you guys to do a practice based on what these podcasts are saying. It's
Absolutely.
just to inform
it's
your
just
practice.
Information.
Yeah.
Okay, so when it comes to blocks, you can go just about anywhere and buy a block of some type. What would your particular recommendation be for a block, Katie?
I like to use the dense foam ones. So there's other ones you can get that are a bit squishy, and they just sort of collapse underneath you, whether you're in bridge pose with blocks or if you're standing on the block with one foot for whatever reason.
Yes.
They just sort of tend to squish. So get a really nice, dense, firm, good quality yoga block, or cork blocks are really dense as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there are wood yoga blocks as well, but they're heavy and they're bit clunky to move around because you're moving it behind you when you're in the pose. So something light's good.
And the edges are a little bit hard. I find. Okay, what about for someone who's like, do your own thing? What would be a good do-it-yourself prop to use if you don't have a block?
Or for this one, I wouldn't recommend any do-it-yourselfs. I think because you're in, you're in a bit of a odd position and moving around. So I would use the correct equipment for safety reasons. I mean, I guess another way to frame the question is how can we creatively use props for bridge, which would be, there's an Iyengar version of bridge where you have the bolster, you're laying over the bolster, the neck, the head, the shoulders drape over the bolster. So you're getting a lot of chest lift, thoracic extension. Then your spine's along the bolster, and then you have your feet on blocks. So there's a real arch through the upper back. Sometimes that's too much extension for people if the bolster's quite high. So you'd want to prop up with blankets underneath the shoulders and the head. So there's one example. Another example is the same thing, the same position. So legs are straight in this one as well, like they were with the bolster version, but it's another Iyengar one where you lay over a bench. And so again, a lot of thoracic extension. Iyengar, they might also use chairs to do it. I have seen pictures, I've never tried it, with yoga wheels.
Yoga wheels, is it like a wagon wheel chocolate or?
A little bit bigger.
Okay.
A little bit bigger.
A little bit bigger,
and
okay.
Not nowhere near as delicious.
Yeah.
So it's like a big wheel. Yeah.
Sorry.
Also, other ways we can use props is a block between the thighs. That's a really nice thing to give you something to squeeze onto. So you're working the adductors, and the idea of working the adductors is to hopefully get you to release the upper fibres of the glutes that can tend to take over because they're stronger, and really target the lower fibres of the glutes, which tend to be underdeveloped for a lot of us. But I mean, you can squeeze your legs in and that's great. But the other thing for some people is not to squeeze in. And sometimes when you have the knees a little wider, that can offload the tension through the quads and give you a little bit more space and ease in the pose as well.
So thanks, Katie. That's a massive amount of information to digest. So look, go back, watch it again, and pick up the bits that you might not have picked up the first time.
Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah, and if you're on podcast or listening, then follow, because that way every time a new one comes out, you'll be let know that that's happening.
And as we said, the website's down below, so jump on, check us out. You can join our mailing list.
Yep.
And if you want to, we've got our classes there that
online classes. You
can subscribe to.
Subscribe to, and there's getting more and more classes all the time.
Yeah.
So thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Fuck me.